My name is Brooke Anderson. I'm 34 years old, and not too long ago, I believed I had everything figured out. I was a wife, a mother of two, a woman with a modest career, and a perfectly organized life in suburban New England. But then, life did what it always does when you think you're safe. It pulled the rug right out from under me. The man I had trusted, Nathan Pearson, my husband of 10 years, was cheating on me with his 25-year-old assistant. I found out the hard way. A late-night text, a forgotten voicemail, a photo I'll never unsee. Suddenly, my world collapsed. I wasn't a wife anymore, just a mother trying to survive heartbreak while protecting my children. Madison, my 16-year-old daughter, sharp and perceptive, and Ethan, only 8, sweet and far too trusting. I moved out, left behind our colonial home, the white picket fence, the matching monogrammed towels, and traded it all for a 3-bedroom apartment I could barely afford. I thought the worst was behind me, but what I didn't know was that my true battle, the one that would test not just my strength but my soul, was only just beginning. I was born into a family that looked perfect from the outside. The Wallace name meant something in New England. My father, Richard Wallace, built a real estate empire from nothing. My mother, Diana Wallace, ran our family like a Fortune 500 company, hosting charity galas, curating guest lists, keeping every scandal tightly sealed behind French doors. We had the wealth, we had the reputation, but we never had softness. In the Wallace household, love was earned, never given freely. A high grade got you a smile. A school award earned you a weekend trip. But disappoint them once, and you were invisible for days. They didn't hit, they didn't yell. They withdrew their attention, their warmth, their approval. My childhood felt like an audition I could never pass. And maybe that's why, when I married Nathan Pearson, the son of one of my father's closest business partners, I thought I had finally done something right. My parents loved Nathan, his ambition, his manners, his ability to make them look good in public. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged. But now, looking back, I wonder if they ever truly saw me. Or if they only ever saw a daughter who had finally learned her place. When my parents announced they were hosting a black tie gala for their 40th wedding anniversary, I saw it as a gift, a second chance. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment we stopped pretending and finally healed. I couldn't afford a new dress, so I took an old one from the back of my closet and altered it myself. Madison rolled her eyes when I said I wanted it to be perfect. Why are you trying so hard for people who barely try for you? I smiled and gave her the only answer I could. Because that's what family does. We show up. The evening was flawless on the surface. The country club was glowing, white roses on every table. A string quartet playing Vivaldi. My father looked sharp in his tuxedo. My mother was radiant in a silver-beaded gown. They greeted guests like royalty. And I played my role, the beautiful daughter, the divorced one, the one who still smiled. I moved through the room gracefully, accepting empty compliments about how strong I looked, nodding through questions like, "So, are you seeing anyone yet?" Every smile cost me something, but I was willing to pay the price for peace, even if I had to bleed beneath the dress no one saw me mend. Madison had never liked these parties, the dresses, the polished floors, the fake laughter. She moved through them like a ghost, always watching, rarely speaking. That night, she looked stunning in the emerald dress my mother had picked, but her eyes told a different story. They darted from table to table, from Grandpa Richard's lingering hand on Ethan's shoulder to Nathan laughing far too comfortably with my mother, to the way no one seemed to look at me directly for more than a second. Madison wasn't smiling. She was scanning, observing every interaction like a detective gathering clues. I remember placing a hand on her arm and whispering, "You okay, honey?" She hesitated, just for a beat, then said, "Mom, doesn't something feel off to you?" I laughed it off, told her she was overthinking, that it was just a party. But I should have listened. Because Madison, my 16-year-old daughter, was seeing the cracks in a foundation I had spent my entire life pretending was solid. The cake had just arrived, a towering, glittering display of sugar and symbolism. Everyone clapped. The string quartet swelled. Glasses clinked. My parents stood at the center, arms around each other, grinning like they'd just won a Lifetime Achievement Award. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at Madison. She wasn't clapping. She wasn't smiling. She was gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white, her jaw clenched. Then she turned to me slowly, like she had to calculate every move. And she whispered, "Mom, we need to leave, now. They're planning to take Ethan from you." I froze. The room kept moving, spinning in slow motion behind me, a surreal blur of toasts and laughter. I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to laugh it off. Her eyes didn't blink. "I'll explain in the car, but please trust me, we can't stay." There was no panic in her voice, just a terrifying calm. The kind of calm you only hear when the person in front of you knows something you don't, something that could shatter you. And in that moment, for the first time, I felt it too. Something was very, very wrong. I stood there frozen, holding a half-empty glass of champagne that suddenly tasted bitter. "They're planning to take Ethan from you." Madison's words echoed in my mind, like a dropped wine glass in a quiet room. No, that's ridiculous, right? I scanned the room. My father was laughing with a group of investors, one hand resting lightly on Ethan's back like he owned him. My mother was leaning in close to Kayla, admiring her necklace, the one I had once worn. Nathan was deep in conversation with my father's attorney. I told myself it was just coincidence, that Madison was being dramatic, suspicious, overly protective. But then I remembered Madison had always seen things before I did. She saw the cracks in my marriage long before I admitted them. She noticed the way my parents gave affection with strings attached. And now she was afraid. Not angry, not sulking, afraid. And suddenly, so was I. While I tried to keep smiling through small talk and champagne, Madison had already disappeared into the background, becoming part of the wallpaper. But she wasn't hiding. She was watching, every glance, every whisper, every hand placed just a little too long on a shoulder. She saw my father lean in and whisper something to Nathan, and then both of them glance over at Ethan like they were studying a blueprint. She saw my mother take Kayla's hand and lead her down the hallway toward the family photo wall. A minute later, Madison followed silently. From the corner of the hallway, she watched them point at a photo of my childhood home. She couldn't hear their exact words, but she could read their expressions. Admiration, anticipation, possession. Then she caught something that made her blood run cold, a glance. Her grandmother's cold, smiling eyes looking directly at her reflection in the hallway mirror, as if to say, "We know you're watching, little girl, but you're already too late." Madison didn't trust anyone at that party, but she trusted her instincts. 3 weeks before the anniversary, she had reached out to a name that no one in our family dared mention, Samantha Wallace, my father's youngest sister, my estranged aunt, the woman we were told was unstable, dramatic, selfish. At least that's the version of her story I grew up with. But Madison, she questioned that version, and what she found shook everything we thought we knew about the Wallace legacy. Samantha answered Madison's message with cautious kindness. Then she asked just one thing. "Why are you really reaching out to me?" And Madison wrote, "Because the way Grandpa treats my mom feels familiar and wrong." That broke the silence. Samantha began sharing her side of the story, how she once stood where I stood, the golden daughter who dared make her own decisions, and how one by one they stripped her of everything, her trust fund, her home, her name. They called her ungrateful. They painted her as unstable. And when she fought back, they erased her. But now, the girl no one expected to pay attention, Madison, was listening. And Samantha was ready to speak. Madison didn't mean to find them, but once she did, she couldn't look away. It happened a week before the party. My parents invited us over for Sunday brunch. The usual performance: white linen napkins, fresh-cut flowers, and tension served with eggs Benedict. Grandpa went golfing. Grandma told Madison she could study in Richard's home office. Big mistake. Madison was never the kind of girl who snooped, but something about that room, the way the desk was organized yet cluttered, the way files were stacked neatly, but one folder had red sticky flags poking out. Her eyes caught it. My name, Ethan's name, Nathan's name. Her hands started to shake. The folder was filled with legal drafts, property transfer forms, custody modification petitions, trust reallocations, and in the margins, notes written in my father's familiar, neat handwriting. Keep house in Wallace Trust. Nathan, primary trustee. Reposition Ethan as sole heir. Madison, unstable, uncooperative, remove from line. Madison took photos of every page. Not because she fully understood the legal terms, but because she felt the chill of knowing your own family is drawing up documents to erase you. And when she put the folder back exactly where she found it, she didn't tell me right away. She waited, watched. And when the party came, she knew this wasn't chaos. It was a carefully orchestrated ambush. Madison didn't just take pictures, she recorded. That night at the party, while everyone else was drinking champagne and giving toasts, my daughter had her phone in her pocket, microphone exposed, quietly capturing truths no one was supposed to hear. And when we got home, after I had tucked Ethan into bed and sat trembling on the couch, Madison pressed play. I'll never forget what I heard. My father's voice. Calm, measured, cold. Brooke's too emotional to manage the property. She always has been. Nathan understands structure, responsibility. He's the better choice. Then Nathan's voice, smug and confident. I appreciate your trust, Richard. Once custody shifts, I can sign off on the trust documents immediately. And finally, my mother. Sweet, silky, smiling, even in betrayal. She was always different, artistic, sensitive, the kind that sells the house to open an art studio. We can't risk that. I felt something rip inside me. Not just anger, not just heartbreak, but disbelief that the people who raised me were planning to steal my life and hand it to the man who had already betrayed me once. And worst of all, they said it like it was nothing, like it was business. Like I was just a mistake they were finally correcting. Ethan was only 8, sweet, soft-hearted, the kind of boy who cried when cartoons got sad. And my parents knew exactly how to reach him. Not with threats, not with pressure, but with sugar-coated dreams. At Daddy's house, Grandpa would say, "You'll have your own room. Not just any room, a big one with a bunk bed and a gaming chair, maybe even a telescope." Ethan's eyes would light up. And guess what Grandma added? "We're looking at a private school for you. No more boring cafeteria food, real chefs, sweetie." "But what about Mom?" he'd ask, confused. There was always a pause, just long enough. Then Grandma would smile and say, "Oh, your mother has her art things. She's just very busy. You'll still see her, of course." The message was clear, even if they wrapped it in affection. Your mom is a distraction. Your dad is your future. And the more they repeated it, the more my little boy started to believe it. I sat there in the dark. The recording had stopped, but the words kept echoing in my head. She's too emotional. Nathan is the better choice. She might sell the house for an art studio. For years, I believed I was broken. My parents always said I overreacted, that I never finished what I started, that I was too sensitive, too impulsive, too much. And I tried so hard to be less, to tone down, to shrink myself into someone they'd approve of. But now I realize something terrifying. They weren't trying to help me become better. They were trying to control me, to mold me into someone more convenient. And when I stopped being useful, when I got divorced, when I didn't play the perfect daughter anymore, they decided I didn't deserve my own life. They didn't just want Ethan, they wanted everything. My home, my freedom, my worth. And they almost got it, because I let them. I let their voices live in my head. I let their judgment replace my own instincts. Until my daughter looked me in the eye and whispered, "You're not crazy, Mom. You're just not theirs anymore." That's when it hit me. I don't need their version of love. I need truth. I need to fight. The room was too quiet. Brooke stood with her hands trembling, but her voice didn't shake. "Is it true?" she asked, looking straight at her father, Richard. "You planned to give Ethan to Nathan. You tried to cut me and Madison out of the estate. Is it?" Diana gasped. "That's ridiculous." Richard smirked. "You're being dramatic again, Brooke. This is exactly why we worry about your stability." Brooke didn't flinch. Instead, Madison stepped forward, calm, fierce, 16 and done playing their game. She placed a small voice recorder on the table, hit play, and the room filled with Richard's voice. "She'll crack eventually. Nathan's got the judge's ear. Once we get Ethan in, we can settle the rest quietly." Diana's voice chimed in. "That girl Madison is too sharp. Cut her off before she stirs more trouble." Silence. Then Samantha, the aunt they'd ghosted years ago, stepped into view holding a folder of notarized documents. "Recognize this?" she said, sliding over the copy of the property transfer papers and letters of intent to the private school. Diana looked like she'd been slapped. Richard's jaw clenched. "You underestimated the wrong daughter," Samantha said quietly. Brooke's voice returned, steady now. "I don't care how long you've been running this family like a boardroom. I'm done being the unstable scapegoat. I have a voice, and now I have proof." No one moved. For once, truth spoke louder than legacy. The mahogany door clicked shut behind her. Brooke sat down facing a woman in a crisp navy suit. Sharp eyes, calm presence. "You're not from around here, are you?" Brooke asked. The woman smiled unfazed. "No, that's exactly why you called me." Her name was Alicia Chen, a civil attorney based in Boston. No ties to the Wallace family, no country clubs, no charity galas, just a clean record of helping women who'd been outmaneuvered by wealth and connections. Brooke slid over a folder. Inside, voice recordings, property drafts, messages, emails, the arsenal Madison and Samantha had collected. Alicia didn't blink. "They underestimated you," she said. Brooke swallowed hard. "They thought they could take my son, that I'd break down, disappear. But you didn't." Brooke leaned forward. Her voice was no longer shaky. "No, I'm done disappearing. I want to file for full custody. I want to void the private transfer documents. I want them to know they don't own me anymore." Alicia nodded. "Then let's make them regret thinking they ever did." That's when the real war began. Not with screaming or slamming doors, but with court filings, affidavits, subpoenas, and dates circled on a legal calendar. Brooke wasn't just reclaiming Ethan, she was reclaiming herself. The therapist's office smelled like lavender and crayons. Ethan sat on the beanbag, legs curled up, holding a stuffed elephant. Brooke sat across the room, trying to smile, but her hands were clenched, hidden behind her purse. Ethan, the therapist, said gently, "You said you were confused. Can you tell Mommy what you told me?" Ethan looked down, then looked up. His voice was barely louder than a whisper. "I thought you were the one stopping me from going to the good school." Brooke's heart dropped. I never. Ethan, that's not true." "But Grandpa said it," he continued. He said you were jealous, that you didn't want me to have more than you." The room went silent. The therapist gave Brooke a look soft, understanding, but heavy. Brooke blinked back the sting. "Ethan," she said, moving closer, "do you know why I brought you here?" He shook his head. "Because I love you, not for what school you go to, not for what you achieve, just for you." Ethan looked uncertain. "But they said you cry too much and that you're sick." Brooke smiled through tears. "Then maybe it's time someone told you the truth." That day, Brooke didn't argue with Richard or Diana. She didn't scream or fight. She did something braver. She held her son's hand and told him her story, not to win, but to heal. Because in the end, no courtroom victory mattered if her son still believed the lies. The conference room felt colder than it should. 4 chairs, 4 sides, 4 truths. Brooke sat on one side, hands folded, heart pounding, but eyes steady. Across from her, her parents, Richard and Diana Wallace. Perfect posture, controlled smiles, expensive silence. To her left, Nathan, the ex-husband, with a smug grin and a stack of papers. And to her right, Samantha, her aunt, the family's discarded truth. "Calm. Ready. Let's begin," said the mediator. Brooke opened her folder. "Before we do, I'd like to ask a question." Everyone looked up. "When did you decide I wasn't worthy of being Ethan's mother?" Diana raised an eyebrow. Richard sipped water. Nathan chuckled. Brooke Richard began, "This isn't personal. We're talking about what's best for Ethan." "You mean best for the Wallace name?" Samantha interrupted. Diana turned to her sharply. "You don't get to speak." "I do," Samantha said calmly, "because I've seen this before. You did it to me." Brooke turned to her aunt. "What did they do to you, Sam?" Samantha slowly pulled out a faded letter. "They forged a psychiatric report, claimed I was emotionally unstable. Got me removed from the family trust." Brooke's eyes widened. "It's exactly what they're doing to you now." Nathan dropped his papers onto the table. "This is ridiculous." Brooke stood up, her voice firm. "No, this is pattern, and now I've got a record of it." The mediator tried to interject, but no one listened. 4 people, 4 pasts, 4 futures hanging in the balance. The silence was no longer elegant, it was dangerous, and the room was now a battleground. It began with a soft chime, an email. The courtroom was tense. The mediator glanced at the screen and cleared her throat. "There's new evidence," she said. Brooke's heart stopped for a moment, then resumed faster. The subject line read, "From Brian Wallace. This can't go on." Everyone turned. Richard paled. Diana shifted in her seat. The mediator read aloud, "I've stayed silent for too long, but this isn't right. I was there when Dad and Nathan discussed removing Brooke from the equation. I heard Mom suggest planting a story about her mental health, and I saw the forged custody report before it was submitted. I don't want to be part of this lie anymore." Attached were 3 files. Audio file, a recording from the family wine cellar. Richard's voice. "We'll make her look unstable. Nathan will appear calm and responsible. That's how we'll win custody." Screenshot of Diana's email to a private investigator. Dig into Brooke's breakdown after the divorce. Brian's sworn statement, notarized, time-stamped. Brooke stared stunned. Samantha's lips parted in disbelief. Nathan muttered, "You little traitor." But the damage was done. The entire room shifted, power flipped, the Wallace mask cracked, and for the first time, the truth was louder than their money. The judge looked over her glasses. The courtroom was still. In the matter of custody, inheritance, and asset control, this court finds in favor of Brooke Anderson. Brooke exhaled like she hadn't in years. Nathan slumped. Diana gasped. Richard slammed his hand on the table, but the judge continued unbothered. Evidence shows deliberate manipulation, defamation of character, and psychological coercion against the plaintiff. Custody of Ethan remains with the mother. Property and trust rights are restored to Miss Anderson. And from this day forward, any involvement from Richard and Diana Wallace in financial decisions is revoked. Silence. Then a slow clap, Samantha. Brooke turned to Madison, who squeezed her hand tightly. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. But Brooke wasn't smiling for the courtroom. She was smiling because she had finally broken the chain. No more conditional love. No more manipulation masked as tradition. Just freedom. Just truth. Just them. It wasn't a mansion. It didn't have marble floors or a grand piano, but it was theirs. A small, sun-washed house tucked at the edge of a quiet neighborhood. A yard big enough for Ethan to kick a soccer ball. A porch just wide enough for 3 chairs. Brooke unlocked the front door for the first time. Madison stepped in behind her, laughing. Ethan darted past, shouting, "Dibs on the room with the blue wall!" Brooke stood still, her hand still on the door. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. She walked into the living room, placed the house key on the counter, and whispered to herself, "We're finally free." Later that evening, the 3 of them sat outside on the porch, legs tucked under blankets, hot cocoa in hand. The sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the sky in gold and rose. Madison looked over. "So, what's next?" Brooke smiled. "Whatever we want. But this time, on our terms. No masks, no manipulation. Just truth, just love." The night was quiet. Only the sound of crickets and the soft breeze brushing through the porch screen. Madison leaned her head on Brooke's shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. "You know, Mom?" Brooke looked at her. Madison didn't blink. She didn't smile. She just said it clear, steady, and raw. Family isn't who gave birth to you. It's who stands beside you when you're at your weakest. Brooke swallowed hard. Ethan curled up on her lap, mumbled something in his sleep. Madison leaned back and looked up at the stars. "I just wanted you to know. You stood by us, and I'll stand by you. Always." Brooke wiped away a tear she didn't realize had fallen. The porch light buzzed quietly. In that moment, under that sky, they weren't survivors. They were a family, a real one. The house was quiet. Madison had gone to bed. Ethan was fast asleep with his arms wrapped around a teddy bear. Brooke stood alone in the hallway, hand resting lightly on the doorframe. She looked at the picture on the wall, a candid photo of the 3 of them at the beach, wind in their hair, real smiles. For the first time in a long time, her chest felt light. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was finally honest. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "My daughter saved me. Not with money, not with lawyers, not with power. She saved me with truth." A small smile crossed her lips. Not a smile of victory, a smile of release. She turned off the light, letting the house fade into soft darkness. She had broken free, and this time no one was pulling the strings but her. Sometimes the deepest betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from the ones who raised you. But here's the truth. You don't owe loyalty to pain. You don't have to keep silent just because they share your blood. Real family, it's not about DNA. It's about who protects you when you're vulnerable. Who believes in you when the world doubts you. Brooke's story is a reminder that truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is your greatest weapon, and that sometimes your child may see the danger you've trained yourself to ignore. Listen, stand tall, choose your freedom. If this story moved you, if it made you pause, reflect, or even cry, hit that subscribe button. Because here on our channel, we don't just tell stories, we tell the truth. And the truth has power. Subscribe now and never miss the next voice that dares to speak up.